and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Are you a victim of the timeshare trap and think there's no way out? I'm Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group, the original timeshare cancellation expert. And I'm here to tell you that there is a way out. All you need to do is give my office a call. I will send you a timeshare exit information kit absolutely free, explaining how the timeshare industry works and your options for cancellation.
Call Wesley now for your free info kit. 800-969-7766. That's 800-969-7766.
Paid for by Wesley Financial Group.
Broadcasting from the Kanowski-Bresney studios comes the radio medium Laura Lee Show.
I feel like you had to let him go.
Yes, it is. He was on life support.
You've taken on the burden for his passing. Is that true?
That is right.
There's something to do with a Barbie doll.
He used to stick the old school Barbie dolls in the cake.
Oh my God, you're giving me goosebumps right now.
The radio medium Laura Lee Show. Tune into your spirit every Tuesday at 4 p.m.
You're tuned in to Money Matters Boston, 1120 AM WBNW. This is the Money Matters Radio Network, WBNW 1120 AM and W275 CM FM, Concord, Boston, the Money Matters Radio Network.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShareIt.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShareIt.com. That's TravelShareIt.com.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
As a busy mom, my to-do list is full.
While we can't add more hours to the day, we do have a great resource to help.
Go Red for Women has information to help you and your family live a healthier life.
Visit goredforwomen.org/momlife today.
Did you outgrow your timeshare and now you want out? But you can't. You can't sell it, and you can't get out of the contract. Imagine trying to get out of your mortgage. That's what a timeshare is. You can't just call up the bank and say, I don't want to pay it anymore. But we may be able to help you do just that. Listen, a timeshare maybe for you once was a great thing, but now you don't use it much, and they are not easy to get rid of. Plus, you do have to pay for it every month. Qualified timeshare owners can get out of their contract legally and permanently without ruining your credit or even filing bankruptcy. And imagine, no more mortgage payment or fees. Call the Timeshare Exit Hotline qualification line now. It's free to learn more.
800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. That's 800-455-7967. Paid for by Timeshare Defense.
This is Tucker Silva of the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutzke from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with your Financial Exchange quick tip of the day. And today we're talking about your brand new guide, Todd, how to leave assets to your beneficiaries. Todd, how can you ensure that your kids' inheritance can be protected from future divorces?
Well, estate planning, as you know, does things like avoid probate, protect assets from nursing homes, and reduce taxes. But you know what? The family behind the estate plan can be more important. And so the trusts live on after you die, and you can have language in there that divides the assets to the children, but doesn't just pay it out, right? It holds it in trust for them and allows them to be trustee, but just not take it. In order to get it, they have an independent trustee that can say yes or no. And that way, by not owning the asset, if they get divorced down the line after you're dead, and the other side says, hey, I want half of what's in that trust, you're going to say, that's great, but you have to ask the independent trustee. So it's now not going to be available to you. And more than just the ability to say no, it's the fact that you don't own it. So if you don't own it, it's not a marital asset to begin with, so it should not be even subject to the divorce. So learning how your trust works after you die can oftentimes be more important than when you're living, and it does more for you after you die than when you're living sometimes.
The estate planning experts at Cushing & Dolan have been helping families like yours for more than 30 years, and they've written a brand new guide called How to Leave Assets to Your Beneficiaries. To get your free copy of this comprehensive guide that will help you determine the best way to leave assets to your family, simply call 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699, or you can request it from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Marc Fandetti. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and making a donation today. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Marc Fandetti.
Good morning, happy Friday, and welcome back to the Financial Exchange. It's going to be another big day of tariff talks here on the Financial Exchange and a look into markets. If you missed yesterday's show or just, I don't know, we're in a coma yesterday. Tariffs were announced Wednesday after the bell, starting around 4 p.m. during a press conference. Yesterday during markets, you saw a substantial sell-off in equity markets. S&P finished the day down, 4.7% thereabouts, Mark. NASDAQ worst, Russell worst of all. The Russell 2000 is your typical small cap names that you probably haven't heard of. And that is now in bear market territory. We're going to start throwing out terms that we haven't used in a little while. Bear market would indicate a drop from recent highs of 20% or more. So the Russell 2000 U.S. index has reached that level. NASDAQ, I don't know. With today's moves, we might be there now. But as of yesterday, was off a good 17 or 18% from those all-time highs. And as I mentioned, NASDAQ this morning down a good 3%. And the S&P with today's moves likely down in the 15% range. So we did have a jobs report that came out at 8:30 this morning. We're not going to make that our first story because, frankly, it's not the most important story of the day because it's backward looking and the world changed a little bit on Wednesday. So we're going to start right there. Yesterday during the program, we classified the tariffs in kind of two buckets, and I know, Mark, you weren't here, but we classified the tariffs that were announced in two different buckets. One was the baseline tariffs applied to 160 countries across the globe, goes into effect 5 days from now, and those baseline tariffs are at a rate of 10%. In addition, there are what we're describing, again, these are our words, not the president's, not the White House's. There are an additional set of tariffs on 57 some odd countries that we're referring to as the reciprocal tariffs, because they seem to be designed to hit at countries where we have a trade deficit with them of one sort or another. And so those are the ones we are describing as reciprocal in nature. And what we said during yesterday's show was that the next 6 days are going to be fairly critical in terms of determining the direction of some of this stuff over the short term, because they go into place on the 9th. And I think if there was one silver lining to Wednesday's press conference, it was that, hey, there's a delay in the implementation of these, perhaps leaving room for negotiation. Well, we got the first mover on that, and it was not a negotiation, it was a retaliation, and China has announced that they will be retaliating with 34% tariffs on all U.S.-made goods entering China. I believe that begins immediately, but I don't recall.
With China?
With China.
I saw April 10th.
April 10th is the implementation date of those tariffs on U.S. goods going into China. So taking a pause here, markets interpreting that as bad news. You had futures a little bit flat immediately after the bell yesterday, but as this news came out, you started to see the futures turn negative this morning, and at this moment, you've got all three major indices down, at the least 2 3/4% on the Dow, and at the most about 4% on the Russell. So big takeaways from any of those announcements, Mark?
Well, it's the uncertainty that's the killer. The prescription, when it hits, will be obviously demand sapping and will slow economic growth. The uncertainty in the interim, even if none of this happens, will postpone investment decisions and spending decisions. Imagine if you didn't know what your tax rate was going to be a week from now. And you needed a car in the end. Imagine if you didn't know that. It could be anywhere from your top marginal rate or whatever your average rate is, maybe a better way to think about it. It could be anywhere from 5 to 40%. You'd say, well, this is preposterous. I was going to make a big purchase. We need a washing machine, going to buy a new car, whatever. I need to move some money from stocks to something more liquid so I can pay my tax bill, if you're lucky, I guess. It's sort of like that for an individual. That's the only analogy I can come up with. So whether or not the amount, to me, there's a lot of theater around the rollout. They've got the game show board, and he's pointing to this country, I've been here, and we're going to do this to them. This is a nice place, but I still got to tariff them. That's all kind of theater and politics and done for effect, and I understand that. But what I get from all of that is the uncertainty that it engenders. One of the main in times like this, I just tend to retreat into history and numbers for personal sanity purposes. And one of the main transmission channels of the Great Depression, and I'm not suggesting at all that we're on the precipice of anything like that, but it was uncertainty that led people to pull back in their purchases of durable goods and interest-sensitive goods. We all know Ben Bernanke. He ran the Fed. He made his bones as an economist studying the Great Depression. So I went back and read his work from the early 80s, and he did about 20 years worth of just prolific stuff on the Great Depression. And the big takeaway is the crash, the stock market crash, it wasn't the proximate and primary cause of the depression, but it did spark uncertainty. And that caused people and businesses to hold off. And what sticks with you after reading that literature on one of the causes of the Great Depression is how important policy certainty is, Mike.
So taking a look at specific trade with China, I think, it's pretty clear when we talk about import tariffs of Chinese manufactured goods into the United States, what we're talking about there, because everyone buys stuff made in China. We know, right? Like, take a look at your TV, take a look at your clothes, take a look at your coffee mug, probably your iPhone. It's pretty clear.
We're talking into.
What's less clear, especially for people in the Northeast, is what exactly does the United States make that gets exported to China? And that's the new announcement that's as of today. So I took a look at 22 numbers. So this was data put together for trade with China going back to 2022, which has likely shifted somewhat since then, especially on the semiconductor side of things, but generally I think we can think of as a proxy. So in 2022, the largest export to China, which, again, if you think about the announcements recently, you'll realize this, oilseeds and grains accounted for about $25 billion worth of exports to China. That was the largest single category. it's agriculture imports. And we've talked about a little bit of this, but one of the key benefactors of all this trade policy might be Brazil, because they compete with us in those agricultural goods significantly. They did not face any substantial tariffs on Wednesday's announcement, and already it's being looked at as, hey, China may turn towards Brazil for buying those goods there instead of in the United States. Semiconductors and components did account for another $11.2 billion. So think about companies like NVIDIA getting hit yesterday. I haven't looked at their stock today, but that most certainly plays a role too. Oil and gas.
NVIDIA down by 6%.
After being down, 9% yesterday, maybe a little bit more. I don't recall exactly. Oil and gas exports accounted for about $11 billion. Pharmaceuticals and medicines accounted for $10.9 billion. Everything else other than that was less than $10 billion. So I won't go through those piece by piece. But again, I think helps you set a framework for what we're actually talking about, because trade is both ways. We talk about trade imbalance, but that doesn't mean that we don't sell anything to China. That obviously there's obviously a massive amount of trade that happens with China. They are, I think, account for the second largest amount of trade other than the European Union in terms of total. No, that Canada and Mexico take the cake on those. But between United States and China, there's a massive amount of trade. And what we're talking about today with these newly announced tariffs from China on the United States primarily, I think, hits Middle America, right? It's primarily talking about farmers and what they are going to struggle with over the next 6 months to a year as these things get navigated out, or perhaps much shorter if something gets agreed upon. But today, the first move on tariffs was not some sort of negotiation, was not some sort of reconciliation with trade partners. It was further escalation towards a full-on trade war, and I think that's, to me, what's moving markets more than anything else today.
Yeah, it's the uncertainty.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We don't know what they're going to be, when they're going to get implemented, and that sort of gut-wrenching uncertainty, you feel it physically. At least I do, and I don't think it's just because we work in financial services, Mike. If you're watching the news, it's very, very nerve-wracking. You have to pull away from it.
Yeah, I think that was the general tone. I conducted calls or meetings with about 15 to 20 clients of mine yesterday in a group setting, and that was the general tone from people. It was not extreme pessimism. It was not extreme optimism either.
No, we're in the anxiety phase.
It was the anxiety stage. It was, what does all this mean? What's it going to mean for me? How is it going to develop? How long is it going to take? Will it look better on the other side? Those are the questions, the anxious questions that I think are being raised most commonly when I talk to the general public right now.
They translate directly into market volatility. One almost wishes, and I know I pine for this all the time, that we could go back to the era of the evening news, the morning edition, the afternoon edition. You had talk radio in between, but the focus was different then. When I say then, I mean 70s, 80s, and before, obviously, the ascendance of 24-hour cable news and, of course, the internet. It amplifies volatility. How much, I don't know, but it's playing a big role right now because of this is such a unique and singular event. People have made analogies to the tariffs that were enacted in 1930. At that point, though, the economy was already contracting. We'd already had a stock market crash. So that's an interesting parallel in some senses, and in others, it's a completely inapt parallel. So nobody knows what to refer to extrapolate where we're going to be next.
Let's take a quick break here. When we come back, as I mentioned, we did get a jobs report at 8:30. That would normally be the top story of the day. We are going to cover that next. And then I want to dig in there because it'll be a little while before we start getting hard data on this economy that actually matters in light of the recent changes. So let's take a quick break. The jobs report is next here on the Financial Exchange.
Miss any of the show? The Financial Exchange Show podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Preparing for retirement can be agonizing and might actually feel like a full-time job. This is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Creating a budget that fits your goals and needs in retirement is one way to alleviate some of that stress. Our new guide is called How to Build a Retirement Budget, and it contains several strategies that may help you coordinate your assets in a way that allows you to enjoy financial peace in your retirement years. From understanding your income sources to setting up the proper withdrawal schedule, this guide can help you build a complete budget that covers all of your retirement needs. If you're at or near retirement age, give the Armstrong Advisory Group a call at 800-393-4001 and ask for our new guide today. That number again is 800-393-4001, or you can request the guide online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Leaving assets to your beneficiaries is a critical piece of any estate plan. Cushing & Dolan, the experts in elder law, has written a new guide that may help ensure that your assets are protected for years to come, while helping you avoid unnecessary mistakes during your planning. As an example, the new federal estate tax exemption is nearly $14 million. That could lead to a larger inheritance for your family members, but still raises concerns. There are several strategies in this new guide that will help you learn how to make the right decisions about your distributions at the right time. Cushing & Dolan have been helping New England families for more than 30 years. Let them help you, too. Call 866-848-5699 and get their brand new guide called How to Leave Assets to Beneficiaries. That number again is 866-848-5699. Or you can request the guide online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or a family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visitusvi.com/promotions, where you'll find the details about all of these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divi Carina Bay all-inclusive beach resort and casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visitusvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com/promotions.
Here at the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, we are committed to all students not only attending, but succeeding at school. Your presence is powerful. Share why you attend at doe.mass.edu.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Let's talk LDL. AKA bad cholesterol. The higher your LDL cholesterol, the higher your risk of a heart attack or stroke. Your health matters. Know your number. Talk to your doctor and get your cholesterol checked. And learn how to help lower your LDL bad cholesterol. Because your health is in your hands. Find out more at heart.org/LDL.
Wall Street Watch, a full update on the market's performance to date. Weekdays at 10:30, only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
This segment of the Financial Exchange is brought to you in part by the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Tourism. The U.S. Virgin Islands are St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John, and they are the perfect place for your next vacation. Enjoy spectacular beaches, world-class cuisine, and a wide variety of water sports. Don't miss your chance to visit America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Go to visitusvi.com for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com.
Mark, I want to get to the jobs report in just a moment here. In terms of market action, we've got the Dow now off 3%, S&P off about 3.5%. In the bond market, we are seeing yields move down again a second day in a row. We are now under 4% on the 10-year Treasury. And my point with the market moves that we're seeing right now, oil seeing a big sell-off as well, is, and again, I bring this up because it was directed at me as some questions from clients the other day. This is not a market that's worried about inflation right now. In spite of the fact that tariffs could raise prices in the short term, this is a market that's worried about recession. And so I want to kind of keep that in context when we're talking about this jobs report, which measured employment back during the month of March. And that jobs report came out this morning at 8:30 a.m. It would normally be the only thing we're talking about, but most market experts are basically throwing this in the trash. It is probably not a useful indicator of what happens next. The unemployment rate sat at 4.2% in the month of March. No significant change there from the previous month. Back in February, the number of people unemployed were sitting at 7.1 million individuals. And that unemployment rate has really been sitting in this narrow range of between 4 and 4.2 going back to May of last year. So nearly a year now we've been sitting and bumping around in this range of, again, a starting point of very low unemployment. Other numbers that were in there, Mark, anything else that that mattered to you? There were 228,000 jobs created in the month of March, and so taking a look at those numbers, that is, again, interesting. Was there anything noticed on the government side in terms of employment?
If you strip there's been a lot of attention paid to that lately, and if you strip out government jobs of the 228, I think it amounted to... It was, I'm sorry, I had that, and now I've lost track of it. It wasn't a meaningful portion.
Yeah, so federal government employment declined by only 4,000 in March. Not a big read there. It did lose 11,000 in February, so those are cumulative. But generally speaking, and it actually calls out in the survey, employees on paid leave or receiving ongoing severance pay are counted as employed in this survey. So if you are technically losing your job in the future from the federal government, but still getting paid, they're going to count you as employed still. And so we might be undercounting the effect of the federal government layoffs in this report here as well.
Yeah, the other statistic that some researchers pay attention to is the change in average hourly earnings, because wages feed into, they're not the only determinant or even the biggest necessarily, but they feed into inflation. The annualized rate there was about 3%. So steady as she goes. Not exactly what the Fed wants to see. They might want to see slower wage growth, but all bets are, we're talking like it was 2 weeks ago.
Right.
It feels silly to be discussing this in a vacuum because, as you said at the beginning of this segment, Mike, the fears have clearly shifted from an economy that's running too hot to an economy that might be stalling, although that doesn't necessarily put downward pressure on inflation. Inflation does have inertia, so to speak. It's pretty persistent. And if the underlying forces generating inflation, which ultimately come down to too much money, at least in the long run, too much money being printed by the Fed, if those haven't changed, or if the Fed responds to these tariffs, which you can think of as a shock to supply, things coming into the economy from outside getting more expensive, we could model that as a so-called supply shock, just like an oil price increase. The Fed may decide to accommodate that supply shock, because if they don't, if you think about people having to spend more money on what gets imported and domestic goods, because substitute goods will go up too. Go ahead.
You're going quickly here, so I want to slow it down for everybody that's following.
Is it the third cup of coffee?
When we talk about the Fed accommodating a supply shock, define...
Yeah, that's a little technical.
Define all parts of that sentence.
So think about this. When stuff...
Define every word you just said, if you don't mind.
What he's trying to say is, what?
Okay, that you're right, Mike. That is a researcher's term. When something gets more expensive, like oil, that comes into the economy from outside, one way to think about it is as a supply shock. It's a shock because it's an increase, a relative change in the price of something. Oil compared to hamburgers or your shoes or whatever. Oil has become relatively more expensive. If you need just as much oil as you did the day before, gasoline, more relatably, you're going to have less money to spend on everything else.
Sure.
Because the price of everything else doesn't immediately go down. There's another concept that I won't name because it's also technical that comes into this discussion. Just take it at face value that in the short run you have less money if one thing gets more expensive relative to the other because you can't change your consumption patterns dramatically.
And you bring up oil, I think, because in the 1970s and 80s,
and it's the textbook example of a supply shock.
Yeah, it happened, and we saw a big supply shock.
There's productivity. There's tariffs. Yep. There are others. So the Fed has to decide, do we let the economy slip into recession or slow down, or do we print more money to accommodate the increased need for money? I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but that's where this notion comes from of the Fed accommodating a supply shock. The most recent example is during COVID, when the price of things coming in and the price of domestically produced goods went up because we shut the economy down. That price rise was not met by immediate price falls elsewhere in the economy. Right. So the Fed decided to accommodate the COVID supply shock and the demand shock from COVID too, for that matter, because we were pumping a lot of stimulus into the economy. That's what allows inflation to take hold. So the Fed can't just be thinking about, geez, when do we cut rates if the economy's sliding into recession because of these tariffs? They also have to consider the supply shock implications for inflation. It makes their job a lot harder, Mike, and I don't think we're going to get out of this without some inflation pain and probably some economic pain, though we don't know enough about the tariffs to say for sure yet.
Right. Yeah, it is still very early on. In terms of upcoming economic data, we get a whole bunch of stuff next week, but I have to say that in terms of the big things that we usually report on this show, whether it's unemployment, CPI, other measures of spending, we probably won't get great data on what consumers are doing post-tariff announcement till the May time frame. Quick break. Wall Street Watch is next.
Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @TFE Show. Breaking business news is always first, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Heads up, athletes, coaches, and parents. Play for life, not just points. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or HCM, is the leading cause of sudden cardiac death, especially in black athletes in sports like football or basketball. If you feel shortness of breath, chest pain, and fatigue, or have a family history of HCM, talk to your doctor. Don't let HCM bench you for good. Learn how to stay in the game at heart.org/HCM student athlete. Your heart, your health, your move.
Leaving assets to your beneficiaries is a critical piece of any estate plan. Cushing & Dolan, the experts in elder law, has written a new guide that may help ensure that your assets are protected for years to come, while helping you avoid unnecessary mistakes during your planning. As an example, the new federal estate tax exemption is nearly $14 million. That could lead to a larger inheritance for your family members, but still raises concerns. There are several strategies in this new guide that will help you learn how to make the right decisions about your distributions at the right time. Cushing & Dolan have been helping New England families for more than 30 years. Let them help you, too. Call 866-848-5699 and get their brand new guide called How to Leave Assets to Beneficiaries. That number again is 866-848-5699. Or you can request the guide online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. The DAV of Massachusetts has helped me and countless others adjust to civilian life through a variety of incredible programs. Through our local Veterans Assistance Program, we provide necessary services to veterans and their communities, such as food shopping, landscaping, and companionship, but we need your support. You can help by making a donation today. Please visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we have a guide available this month titled How to Build a Retirement Budget. Mike, one of the rules of thumb that gets tossed around is, hey, just withdraw 4% of your portfolio each year and you'll be fine. Is that true still?
It can be, but it also leads to some confusing conversations because that 4% rule, one, is dependent on a very specific asset allocation that was recommended by the person that created it. And two, a lot of those things have changed over time and doesn't really account for the fluctuations that every retiree sees, right? You might retire and not start Social Security right away, in which case your withdrawals could be higher for a period of time.
What about on the other side of the ledger when you look at expenses? A lot of people say, well, I expect my expenses to go down. Maybe I only need 70 to 80% of my pre-retirement income.
Yeah, I mean, this one makes sense, right? Like, you know, you're right now making money. You might be putting money into your 401k, paying FICA taxes that you won't in retirement. But this one especially, I have to say, varies a lot from person to person. That's 70 to 80% of pre-retirement income. And think about it this way, right? Do I still have a mortgage? Might that mortgage get paid off at some point in my retirement? What sort of debts do I have? Am I going to downsize to one car? Are we going to need both? What sort of travel am I planning on? And so that 70 to 80% rule can be a good starting point, but really you need to start with the budget.
Our guide is titled How to Build a Retirement Budget, and the way to request it is by calling 800-393-4001. That number again is 800-393-4001 to request our latest guide, How to Build a Retirement Budget.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Time now for Wall Street Watch, a complete look at what's moving markets so far today, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Well, the steep market sell-off continues for a second consecutive day as Wall Street continues to grapple with the escalating trade war, where China this morning said it will impose a 34% tariff on all goods imported from the U.S. beginning on April 10th. Right now, the Dow is down by 3.5%, just over 1,400 points. S&P 500 down 4.1%, or 222 points, and the NASDAQ is down 4.5% now. Sell-off picking up steam, or 743 points. The Russell 2000 down by 5% at the moment. 10-year Treasury yield below 4% now, down 15 basis points. Now sits at 3.90%, and crude oil down 8% today. On top of everything, traders are also reacting to the March jobs report, where 228,000 jobs were added last month, well above expectations of 140,000. The unemployment rate ticked higher from 4.1% to 4.2%. Bank stocks, including Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, and others, are also seeing losses of between 6 and 8% due to increasing fears of an economic slowdown amid the growing trade war. Nike down another 3% today after taking a 14% hit yesterday. Meanwhile, tech stocks continue to sell off due to tariff and trade fears. After shedding 9% yesterday, Apple down another 3% today as China accounts for about 80% of the tech giant's production capacity, with about 90% of iPhones assembled in the country. Chip stocks, including Nvidia and Broadcom, are down between 6 and 7%. Boeing down by 9% on the heels of China's retaliatory announcement, and equipment manufacturers, including Deere and Caterpillar, also taking hits of anywhere between 3 and 6%. I'm Tucker Sylvan. That's Wall Street Watch.
So yesterday's market was much more technology, hardware companies that were selling products in the United States as well as apparel.
Maybe Tucker should just read what's up.
What?
If something's up, you should report it. Otherwise, assume it's down.
I'll look into that.
3 to 10%.
Today, the focus is much more on companies whose products are either used to support the agriculture sector, which is looking at a big hit due to China tariffs, or companies that export goods directly to China. GE Healthcare off nearly 15%. That's the spinoff from General Electric. DuPont down about 16%. APA Corp, who is oil and gas.
It all makes sense. What's
it's
happening
logical.
Makes sense.
Yeah, this is not a market. We talked about this a bit yesterday. It's not a market where you are seeing everyone selling everything, right? Like yesterday, for instance, you had some utility companies and telecoms up in trading.
In past dramatic. Sorry, Mike.
You're good.
There's some green, by the way, just a little bit.
Yeah,
a lot of consumer staples.
Okay.
Vertex, Pepsi, Mondelez, Kraft is up, D.R. Horton is up, Conagra is up, Lennar up.
Interesting. There are one thing that comes to mind. I think about past big drawdowns in markets, 2000 to 2003, 2008, 2009. People were trying to peer through the fog and find out who's selling, what's going on, who's getting liquidated here, what's triggering this. There's no mystery this time.
True.
You don't need the autopsy. We know exactly why things are selling off, and the relationship in the magnitudes kind of makes sense.
It sort of does. I think we're going to have plenty of people out there doing the minute-to-minute updates on markets, tariffs, etc., and we'll be doing plenty of that as well. But I want to kind of take a broader look at this, Mark, because the U.S. economy, whether it was good for you individually or bad for you individually, the last 80 years has kind of had a theme of free markets, pushing to reduce trade barriers, and the United States being one of the most, probably the most powerful military in the history of the world, but opening up trade, opening up corridors for global trade via sea, powerful navy that would police those waters, and the entire idea has been U.S. being a reliable trade partner and defense partner over the course of the last 80 years, and that has been. Let's talk about what that's meant for different groups of people.
So the structure of the world trading system as it existed prior to the new, I'll just call it regime. It's not just about the Trump administration, because Biden was a protectionist too.
Sure.
This new spirit of protectionism, new mercantilism, if you like, that's a specific term. I probably won't use it again. It's at odds with the trend of the post-war pattern. Pushing toward more, and it was quite deliberative. The world was in shambles except for us.
Right.
So we made the dollar the world's reserve currency. You've heard of the World Bank, the IMF, the UN. All of these institutions came out of the horrific turmoil of not just World War II, but World War I as well. We tried some of this after World War I when we were the creditor nation to the world for the most part. So these institutions were very deliberately set up by America and its allies, but with us at the lead, and we benefited from them enormously economically. If you don't believe that, if you buy into the we're getting ripped off baloney, frankly, just look at our GDP relative to anybody else's. You can quibble that that's not the best measure of economic welfare. We've grown faster, and we have been and continue to be the envy of the world. And that's due to anyone who knows the evidence, not some politician blowing smoke. That's due to us forcing open markets and allowing for free trade. Go ahead, because we'll talk about the trade deficit, too, and its causes and whether it's good or bad, I presume, at some point.
Yeah, and I think, look, that part is undebatable, right? The U.S. economy has grown faster than anywhere else in the world. There are obvious... For the most part, there are obvious downsides to that for some portions of Americans because not everybody has participated equally in all that, and I think that's why you're seeing some of this protectionist push over the course of the last few decades.
There's no question. It's coming from Midwestern. I'm gonna be very specific here, Mike. The same group of Midwestern politicians in the 40s and 50s, they were the Taft Republicans, not President Taft, but his son, Ike. And the what you would call today globalist Republicans, today it's a pejorative, then it was not. They instead looked outward. Yep. They won. And the Republican Party from then on, and the Democratic Party, I think they prefer to be called, the Democratic Party too embraced, for the most part, free trade. But the Midwest, and this is the strain you see in J.D. Vance today, and his cadre of techno, they say they're libertarian, but they're not really anti-free traders. They've always thought they were walled off from the world because they're just too darn far from the oceans. So I see strains of the protectionism of the 40s and 50s rearing its head here, but that is so at odds with the prosperity, that openness and multilateral institutions that today get demonized produced for us here in the United States.
In either case, this is the reversal that we are talking about.
It is a reversal.
And that is the trend that is pushing things, at least today. I have no real sense of where that's going to continue, but the longer that it continues, the longer that this push is put into place, the narratives of what, for instance, built the stock market into the behemoth that it is today, that built the U.S. as the reserve currency today, all of these things are being challenged, changed, and potentially re-looked at as part of all this. And I think is also why anyone looking at this economy today and trying to tell you that they have seen through the fog and know where we're going to land at the end of it is blowing smoke. Nobody has any real sense of where this turns because there is so much dependence not only on what the United States does next, but what our trade partners, what other countries do next in terms of retaliation versus changes to policies and negotiation.
And this is why the Fed's job gets so difficult. The models they're using are predicated on relationships that were formed, if you will, relationships between variables. I mean, between macroeconomic indicators that were a product of the old structure of the economy. It's very difficult as a forecaster if old relationships change to make forecasts that are worth their salt. So everybody's, I guess my point is, forecasters at the Fed and we in the private sector who try to do it are to an alarming extent using models that no longer apply because the structure of the U.S. economy and indeed the world economy in some ways is changing.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to cover two different stories that are talking about your retirement savings and giving you opposite advice on what to do about it. So we'll cover that next here on the Financial Exchange.
If you missed any of today's show, catch up whenever you want on our YouTube page. Find daily show segments and full shows. Just go to youtube.com and search for the Financial Exchange. This is your home for breaking business and financial news. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Leaving assets to your beneficiaries is a critical piece of any estate plan. Cushing & Dolan, the experts in elder law, has written a new guide that may help ensure that your assets are protected for years to come, while helping you avoid unnecessary mistakes during your planning. As an example, the new federal estate tax exemption is nearly $14 million. That could lead to a larger inheritance for your family members, but still raises concerns. There are several strategies in this new guide that will help you learn how to make the right decisions about your distributions at the right time. Cushing & Dolan have been helping New England families for more than 30 years. Let them help you, too. Call 866-848-5699 and get their brand new guide called How to Leave Assets to Beneficiaries. That number again is 866-848-5699. Or you can request the guide online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShareIt.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShareIt.com. That's TravelShareIt.com.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Retirement planning is complicated enough without having a formal budget to help you maintain your lifestyle during your later years. This is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Our new guide called How to Build a Retirement Budget was written specifically for this purpose. Our goal is to help take your financial concerns out of your retirement years. There are numerous issues to deal with when creating a retirement budget. Everything from understanding where your income will come from, to setting up a proper withdrawal strategy, to being able to remain flexible as market conditions change. This new guide offers structural guidance that may alleviate the pressures of creating your budget. You can request your copy right now by calling 800-393-4001 and ask for our new guide today. Once again, that number, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Environmental nonprofit Ocean River Institute is working with communities to tackle climate change with nature-based solutions that feature slowing water down and building more soil with grasses and plants. Research indicates that people acting in their own neighborhoods can build an inch of soil in a year and slow sea level rise down by as much as 25%. Please visit oceanriver.org for more information on opportunities to make a difference and go the distance for savvy stewardship of a greener and bluer planet Earth.
As a busy mom to 4 kids, my to-do list is full.
Trying to fit in exercise, eating right, and prioritizing self-care can feel next to impossible.
While we can't add more hours to the day, we do have a great resource to help.
Go Red for Women has easy tips, tools, and information to help you and your family live a healthier life.
So to all the moms, the aunts, grandmothers, and amazing women out there doing it all,
visit goredforwomen.org/momlife today.
You take care of them, Go Red for Women will take care of you.
Business and financial news affecting the markets and your wallet. We've got it all straight from Wall Street, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
We brought it up yesterday, but if you have questions for the show, you can text the line at 617-362-1385. We did get one question. Mark, the basic point was, it's just money. Let's talk about the jobs that will be coming back to America. And I think that is, look, that's the entirety of the promise of these policies. The main point of these policies, when combined with what the president is trying to do on taxes, which we will get to later in the program because we keep hearing hints about the new tax bills that are being proposed, is we want to perhaps make some sacrifices to capital, what we're seeing in equity markets, make some sacrifices to temporary growth in order to incentivize companies to bring jobs back to the United States. Yeah. That is the entirety of the gamble, and that is what I'm hearing, pushed to me by clients too, who are saying, yeah, look, the most honest assessment I had of this was from a client the other day who's staring down retirement in the next few days. And his point to me was, look, I fully recognize that this could mean substantially lower returns in my investment portfolio for the rest of my life. But I also think that it could mean really good things for my grandkids who will have more opportunities for employment.
Are they not investors?
No.
This other generation? Oh, okay. Can I make a comment about the whole jobs thing? The jobs thing is perspective. We have no idea. I know some companies are coming out and as part of the political theater of this saying we're going to invest this or that That's all perspective. They haven't done it yet.
Right.
You don't make big investments in a declining economy. There's no demand requiring that you make the investments. So this idea that we're going to tolerate the economy slowing down or worse in the short term, but that's okay, it's going to bring all these companies back. Companies don't make investments when the economy is contracting, for Pete's sake. The logic for that is really, really poor, Mike. And I know the person that texted in heard that from a commentator who sounded authoritative. But people who make statements like that are part of the reason why this is so damaging. It's part of the reason why people are so confused about trade to begin with. That honestly just makes no sense. If you slow the economy, investment will slow. You're not going to get more of it in the hopes of what, a brighter day tomorrow or something. The whole point of a recession is you don't know how deep it's going to be. You don't know when it's going to end. The presumption here, this is going to be what, a 3 or 6 month pullback, and then we're going to come out of it stronger than ever. What if we don't? They're playing with fire, and that's what gives me agita.
They are. That is again the entire promise of the future, though, is that those jobs eventually come back. And I think there's two pieces today. I think this one's from How to Protect Your Savings Now. Is that New York Times, Wall Street Journal? One piece, How to Protect Your Savings Now as markets plunge. The other, hey, retirees from Barron's, the best thing to do to your stock portfolio is nothing. And they directly contradict each other, because the New York Times is saying, hey, don't stay the course. You might want to be thinking about some changes. Barron's is saying stay the course. And I keep getting asked this question too, is, hey, when does this come to an end? When do we see the end of this type of big drawdown in stocks? And my answer is always that there will be some end to it. But how deep, how long it lasts, what do I do in the interim is the age-old question. And you are right, Mark. I don't think you will see that potential increase in employment, potential increase in jobs. While it may come further down the road, and I acknowledge that, it won't until you have the depths of that drawdown, the depths of that uncertainty, reach a peak level of concern.
You don't want to start an avalanche because you don't know where it's going to end. It could be a small one. It could end high up on the mountain. This is not my analogy. People who've looked at stock crashes have tried to determine, is there any relationship between, say, what they look like early on and what they look like later. And there really isn't. Some that start out small and under good economic conditions, 1929 is an example, turned out to be enormous as that just snowballed. Now, we have a lot of safeguards in place in the economy that make a repeat of that unlikely, starting with bank insurance and other mechanisms that are now automatic. But you don't know how deep a recession or a stock drawdown is going to be, which is why you don't egg one on in the first place.
To be clear, the president very clearly disagrees with you.
Yeah, he's the only one. Any researcher who's ever looked at this anywhere, except for his bought and paid for economists who say what he wants them to say, and there's only like 2 of them out of the tens of thousands who actually practice and do research who believe that, Mike. It makes no sense.
So that's where we are going, though, is the president very clearly disagrees. He is willing to bring on that avalanche, to continue the analogy that you've made here, in order to get the changes that he sees as necessary to the economy. And I think that's the important piece to acknowledge, is anybody that's telling you they know where that's going to go in the short term or the medium term is lying to you.
And stocks look ahead. Stocks are down another 5% today. I know I said we wouldn't be alarmist today. Let's be a calming influence. There's enough alarmism. Well, they're down another 5% today. To those of you who think that we're going to come out of this, the other end of the tunnel, it's going to be a new bright future, a golden age. Stocks are not stupid. They look ahead. The price change of a security, any security today, reflects prospects for future earnings. So the fact that investors on average don't think this is a good thing should tell everybody something.
The emotion that's dominating markets today and yesterday is fear and anxiety. I saw it written the other day. Another investment advisor not associated with us said she has 2 types of clients today: those who are anxious and those who are lying about the fact that they're anxious. There is a lot of nerves playing out there right now. I fully recognize that. If you are experiencing those nerves and are unsure about what to do with them, if you haven't had those conversations with yourself or with another advisor about what's going to happen if we do see a 20% further sell-off from here. I'm not saying we will get there. I'm just saying that it is possible, and we've seen it before. If you're thinking about those conversations, especially if you're on the tail end of your working career, call the Armstrong Advisor Group at 800-393-4001. That number once again, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
We are, as Mark mentioned, seeing another bloodbath in markets this morning thus far. S&P at the moment off 235 points, 4 1/3%. The NASDAQ officially entering bear market territory now. We are seeing the NASDAQ off about 22% in trading in total from their peak before. It's off about 4.8% today. The Russell 2000 continues its march into bear market territory, off about 6%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average off 1,480 points, about 3 2/3% in trading so far. Yield on the 10-year Treasury down nearly more than 14 basis points to 3.9%. So those mortgage rates might be finally coming back. And oil prices plummeting today on the reciprocal tariffs and the retaliation, down 9%. We'll have a lot more for you in the second hour. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. Retirement planning is complicated enough without having a formal budget to help you maintain your lifestyle during your later years. This is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Our new guide called How to Build a Retirement Budget was written specifically for this purpose. Our goal is to help take your financial concerns out of your retirement years. There are numerous issues to deal with when creating a retirement budget. Everything from understanding where your income will come from, to setting up a proper withdrawal strategy, to being able to remain flexible as market conditions change. This new guide offers structural guidance that may alleviate the pressures of creating your budget. You can request your copy right now by calling 800-393-4001 and ask for our new guide today. Once again, that number, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
Sometimes we know what's next. Other times, it's impossible to know. Life can change in an instant. Don't be caught standing by the next time someone's heart stops. Knowing CPR gives you the ability to act and takes you from bystander to lifesaver. CPR is a life-saving skill. Join the nation of lifesavers today by learning CPR at heart.org/nation. National support for CPR education provided by Elevance Health Foundation.
New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShareIt.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShareIt.com. That's TravelShareIt.com. This is the Money Matters Radio Network, WBNW 1120 AM and W275 CM FM, Concord, Boston. The Money Matters Radio Network.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Are you over the age of 50? Want peace of mind and financial security for your family? Here's an important message to you from Senior Care USA. The average funeral now costs over $10,000. That leaves your loved ones the burden of paying your debts and funeral costs. Our plans start as low as $1 per day and will pay your family up to $30,000 to help pay for your funeral and other expenses. There are no medical exams. Your rates will never increase, and your plan cannot be canceled, regardless of your medical conditions, as long as you make your premium payments. Get up to $30,000 in final expense insurance. Call now for free information. Just answer a few simple questions and get approved right over the phone in just a few minutes. Call right now.
Call 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. That's 800-378-3818. Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or a family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visitusvi.com/promotions, where you'll find the details about all of these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divi Carina Bay All-Inclusive Beach Resort and Casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visitusvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com/promotions.
This is Tucker Silva of the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutzke from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with your Financial Exchange Quick Tip of the Day. And today we're talking about your brand new guide, Todd, how to leave assets to your beneficiaries. Todd, why can't you just add your kids to your accounts or to your house deed?
Well, you can. It's just not a good idea. So people who do that understand with an account, right, you can put a joint name on the account. Now, that doesn't actually complete the gift because you actually have to take the money out and then the gift is complete. But when you set it up, yeah, the asset would avoid probate. But if something happens to the child, it's going to be, available. Half the asset would be subject to the children's creditor. So you don't want that. And secondly, if you only put one kid on the deed, you've likely disinherited the other kids. So it's not really good planning overall. Whereas if you put the house in the kid's name, now you've actually made a completed gift of half the house and would need to file a gift tax return, number one. Number two, of course, it's exposed to the child's creditors and, yes, divorces. You could find yourself at some point owning half your house with an ex-in-law. Not sure that's a good way to plan. So please, put together trusts. Don't just throw names on deeds or on bank accounts because, as I always like to say, nothing good comes from giving assets away while you're living.
The estate planning experts at Cushing & Dolan have been helping families like yours for more than 30 years, and they've written a brand new guide called How to Leave Assets to Your Beneficiaries. To get your free copy of this comprehensive guide that will help you determine the best way to leave assets to your family, simply call 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699, or you can request it from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Marc Fandetti. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and making a donation today. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Marc Fandetti.
Good morning. Welcome back. Tariff Talk continuing here on the Financial Exchange, and markets are whipsawing this morning. I just, 10 minutes ago now, Tucker, I was speaking about markets. You had the S&P off about 4.5% to 5%. NASDAQ significantly worse. The Dow, if you remember, I was mentioning down like 1,400 points. We've seen a swing positive 1% now on that. So, again, all markets still sharply in negative territory, but now the Dow only down 2.8%, about 1,150 points on the Dow, 3.5% on the S&P, 3 3/4 on the NASDAQ, still clobbered in those small cap names, 6.5% to the downside on those names. All of this in reaction to Wednesday's announcement on tariffs that occurred at 4 p.m. from the Trump White House lawn. We then saw this morning, overnight, really, China announcing their response to tariffs. And frankly, I don't find that immensely surprising. There was not much room for negotiating, I don't think, when it came to the U.S. and China when it comes to these tariffs. And I don't think China was about to bow down and do any sort of negotiating, at least first when it came to these tariffs. What I think remains all important here over the course of the next 5 days is, what do we hear from the White House, from other countries and allies, in terms of what the next steps are. So far, whether it's Japan, Korea, most of Europe, it has been pretty quiet, willing to just let this all play out, see what happens, and maybe come to the table on negotiations. President Trump himself has now said that he is open to those negotiations, contradicting a number of members of his staff who said this is not a negotiation point. These are in place. There's also been some announcements about the TikTok ban coming as soon as Saturday and potential negotiations going on there. But this is a market right now that is struggling to find its footing. It's bouncing all over the place. VIX is shooting through the roof. This is the fear gauge that gets mentioned a lot on Wall Street, the volatility, CBOE volatility index. Just to give you a sense of where that is, so the volatility index is sitting at 39. We last got to those types of levels during the sell-off of COVID, right? We were last seeing those types of volatility levels. It got substantially higher in March of 2020, but it was around 50 back then. To give you a comparison here, go take a look at Great Recession in terms of the volatility we were seeing then. We're right around those levels. 40-ish is where we got during peak recession concerns during the Great Recession.
And part of the reason why these dips are so severe, they're associated with crises historically. You don't get 2, 4, 5% drops in a row outside of severe economic contractions. So are we headed into one? Obviously, it's difficult to say. Stock pullbacks can themselves precipitate economic contraction because people spend less and people get afraid. This was one of the mechanisms that helped transmit, and I'm not making a parallel here. I'm sort of, but I'm not suggesting this will be the outcome, which helped to transmit the Great Depression. If you think about it, it makes sense. Your wealth goes down, or you see other people's wealth going down, or you see these spectacular headlines of market carnage, and you pull back, particularly on durable goods, more expensive stuff or stuff you have to finance. So that's a potential mechanism for economic damage. But I'll say again, these pullbacks are unusual outside of a crisis.
Sure.
But it may have something to do with the valuations from which we started, Mike. We talk a lot about stocks being pricey.
Let's remind people of that
because
I sense that there's probably more people tuning into today's broadcast, the Financial Exchange, than your average day where markets aren't selling off by 4% 2 days in a row. So let's talk about that starting point and just historically how rich valuations were back in February of this year when we reached all-time
really
highs.
high, as you and Chuck Zada talk about a lot. Roughly at all time, for all intents and purposes, for our purposes here, they were roughly at all-time highs. And when we say valuations, we mean the price of a stock relative to either its past most recent 12 months earnings or some other version of it. It's a way to compare stocks to themselves across time and stocks cross-sectionally, if you will, to one another.
And that's valuable because I think everyone knows that stocks were at all-time highs back in February. The important piece here is not only were they at all-time highs, but that it indicated that investors were willing to pay all-time high prices for those stocks compared to any other time in history, other than, I guess the only caveat would be right before dot-com bubble.
Yeah, that's not a reassuring caveat, but
no, it's
you're
not.
right. Technically speaking, things were crazier then, I guess. Some people find that reassuring. So the point is, expensive stocks are a little bit fragile. Investors don't need much of an excuse to sell off kind of frantically, to precipitate a frantic sell off. So I'm trying to find a loophole here, Mike. Maybe we're not falling mid-single digits 2 days in a row because there's some tidal wave coming to take out the U.S. economy. Maybe rather it's just that stocks were very expensive and were ripe for a pullback of 10 to 20%. Those are, after all, normal. It's not normal to lose several percentage points 2 days in a row, and maybe we won't. Maybe we'll finish up today. I mean, who the heck knows?
Yeah, it's been quite a whipsaw.
It's possible that this is just a deflation, if you will, of what was feeling like a bubbly market in traditional valuation terms. Now, there's a catalyst, so that sounds a little stupid because people are clear. J.P. Morgan this morning upping their recession odds to 60% from under 40. They employ a lot of PhD economists who use the same sophisticated models that, say, the Fed uses. So that does get one's attention. I don't want to pretend there's nothing going on in the real economy here, potentially.
President Trump just apparently speaking about the Federal Reserve, saying this would be the perfect time for the Fed to begin cutting rates. No doubt members of the Federal Reserve Board are sitting here watching today's market actions. They do not ignore what happens in the stock market because they recognize exactly what Mark just mentioned, that drops in asset values can cause drops in consumer behavior, which is what the Fed really cares about. Really, they're not necessarily worried about how much your investment portfolio is, but if the value of your investment portfolio begins to affect your spending patterns, then they do care about that. What do you suppose the war room is looking like at the Federal Reserve this week as they digest all of the new announcements on tariffs?
Well, the Fed's job is to keep...
They don't have a war room,
keep unemployment...
As far as I'm aware.
Yeah, they might have the equivalent. Is to keep unemployment as low as is consistent with stable inflation. If you had to summarize their so-called dual mandate, so they're always looking at unemployment or some proxy for it. We talk about the JOLTS report. There are other measures of slack or tightness in the labor market. They've got one eye on that and the other eye on inflation, and there are lots of different measures of that. So the Fed is thinking about the inflation implications of tariffs. They are, as we talked about in the last hour, a supply shock. That's a little bit technical, but just think of it like oil going up by a lot. Prices of everything else don't change at the same time, so you now have less money to spend because you can't cut back on gasoline. You got to go to work. Does the Fed accommodate? Do they print more money to prevent the economy from slowing? That's called accommodating a supply shock. I used that phrase last segment too.
Can we find something else other than oil, since oil's cratering today?
Yeah.
Cars,
others get
cars and electronics.
They get a little esoteric. Supply shocks have to be sort of big to be meaningful. You see them in productivity. You see them in commodities. Food is another one. Maybe that's a better example.
That could be.
There were a couple of food price supply shocks in the 1970s, too, that contributed to the overall pattern of inflation during that decade. So what's the Fed doing today? They're thinking, well, we've got to respond to the slowing economy probably. They may need to print more money to support it. But what about our inflation goal? Remember, they've got one eye on that.
Yep.
Inflation is running at an elevated clip, probably close to somewhere in the low threes, right, based on underlying measures. Is a slowing economy going to bring that down? I know I'm adding more complexity as I go on in my explanation here. And then you've got the president now chirping the Fed needs to lower interest rates. Does that make them more or less likely to act? It probably doesn't affect their views at all, but it does affect markets, which feed back into the Fed's decisions.
Yep.
Would not want to be a Fed policymaker under these conditions.
My guess...
Actually, I would, but,
My guess
job.
right now would be that... if we're going to take recent history as a guide, my guess would be that Jay Powell and the Fed are going to be, as you would put it, willing to accommodate those supply shocks, even through the lessons that they learned.
I don't think they're going to slow the money
served.
supply, Mike. Even though we could see inflation tick up, I don't think they're going to slow it. They don't want the finger pointed at them for recession. Unfortunately, it's my personal view, and this is just conjecture, that the president wants to take over the Fed. He's taken over, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, by the way. I think the president should be able to fire the chair of the Fed. I think they should be more accountable. It would be unfortunate if he appointed in Powell's place a real dove. There are some good people who he's talked about appointing who are solid on monetary policy. I hope that's the switch he makes. But I don't think the market will take it well when he steps in, which, again, just my little prediction for our little wall there. I'm not being analytical at all. The next step is him firing Powell. He fired the first salvo, I think, this morning, and he's known all along he wants to do it. The question for me is, how will the markets take that?
In terms of the next Fed meeting, regularly scheduled Fed meeting is not for another several weeks. Next Fed meeting scheduled for May 7th. At this moment, according to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the likelihood of a rate cut at that meeting is increasing dramatically today. A month ago, there was only about a... hold on just a moment, just double checking here. A month ago... there was actually a pretty significant likelihood of a rate cut. A week ago, there was only about a 1 in 5 chance that the Fed would be cutting rates at that next meeting. It is now about 50-50 in terms of the CME forecasts here for rate cuts at that next meeting.
Also makes sense. Like the other,
again, a logical move upwards in probability on rate cuts in reaction in part to what we're seeing in equity markets. Quick break. We're going to have trivia for you next here on the Financial Exchange.
There's only one show that follows Wall Street's continued volatility. Keep it here all morning long on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. It's easy to say that you're simply leaving your assets to your children, but without proper beneficiary planning, it can cause significant problems. Call Cushing & Dolan at 866-848-5699 and get their new guide called How to Leave Assets to Beneficiaries. Don't leave your future or your children's future to chance. Call 866-848-5699 or request it online from our website, legalexchangeshow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Retirement planning is complicated enough without having a formal budget to help you maintain your lifestyle during your later years. This is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Our new guide called How to Build a Retirement Budget was written specifically for this purpose. Our goal is to help take your financial concerns out of your retirement years. There are numerous issues to deal with when creating a retirement budget. Everything from understanding where your income will come from, to setting up a proper withdrawal strategy, to being able to remain flexible as market conditions change. This new guide offers structural guidance that may alleviate the pressures of creating your budget. You can request your copy right now by calling 800-393-4001 and ask for our new guide today. Once again, that number, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or a family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visitusvi.com/promotions, where you'll find the details about all of these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divi Carina Bay all-inclusive beach resort and casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visitusvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com/promotions.
Let's talk LDL. AKA bad cholesterol. The higher your LDL cholesterol, the higher your risk of a heart attack or stroke. Your health matters. Know your number. Talk to your doctor and get your cholesterol checked. And learn how to help lower your LDL bad cholesterol. Because your health is in your hands. Find out more at heart.org/LDL.
Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women,
taking the lives of 1 in 3.
That's more than all forms of cancer combined.
For too long, heart disease and stroke have taken the lives of the women we love.
But we're not giving up because we have something better,
stronger, more powerful.
We have each other.
When we come together and go red,
the more power we have against our greatest health threat.
Visit GoRedForWomen.org today to learn more.
The Financial Exchange is now available on your Alexa smart speaker. Ask to play the Financial Exchange and catch up on anything you might have missed. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
The Financial Exchange is part of our partnership with the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. This year's 5K is Saturday, November 8th, and registration is now open. The race has sold out each of the past 4 years, and slots will fill up quickly, so don't delay. Visit dav5k.boston today and reserve your spot, or join our team here at the Financial Exchange by registering under Team TFE. That's Saturday, November 8th. For this year's DAV 5K, sign up now at dav5k.boston. Time for trivia here on the Financial Exchange, and this weekend the men's Final Four takes place in San Antonio. Sadly, no teams from New England are in the Final Four this year. Trivia question today: how many teams from New England have won the men's NCAA tournament? Once again, how many teams from New England have won the men's NCAA tournament? Be the fourth person today to text us at 617-362-1385 with the correct answer, and you win a brand new Financial Exchange Show t-shirt. Once again, the fourth correct response to text us at 617-362-1385 will get that t-shirt. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
I mentioned we're going to cover taxes, which we will hopefully get to, but as we predicted, the announcements and news are coming quickly here when it comes to tariffs, and the latest has to do with Vietnam sending Nike shares on the rise. But according to CNBC, Trump is saying that Vietnam is negotiating a tariff deal in place here, and so we will see where that goes. The effective rate that Vietnam was imposing on U.S. goods was already pretty small, so unclear where those talks go. But obviously a company like Nike manufactures about a quarter of its footwear in Vietnam. Their shares had plummeted on the 46% tariff news Wednesday on Vietnam. Today, Nike stock is actually moving up now in reaction to this hint of a deal to come when it comes to Vietnam's 46% tariffs. Nike stock this morning up 4.6% in trading so far.
Yeah, and you might be wondering, do you mind if I talk about the trade deficit for a second?
Sure.
Or did you want to go into something else?
Let's go trade deficit.
Will this help the trade deficit or not? What causes the trade deficit? And you probably won't be surprised to hear that it likely won't, because the trade deficit results from us having an investment surplus. We're welcoming country with a lot of favorable investment opportunities. That requires require foreign capital because we don't save enough to finance all that. The flip side to that is we send our dollars abroad on goods and services. So our exports are lower than our imports because we import. It's not intuitive, but it's useful to keep in mind that the trade deficit is related to something called the capital account surplus. And the reason one is in deficit is because the other is in surplus. And the reason that we have a deficit is that we don't save enough. So if we don't fix, for example, the federal budget deficit, it's not just private savings I'm talking about here.
Yeah, you're talking about the government basically spending more than it's taking in.
And I know we're going to talk about taxes, I think, in this segment. So if we don't fix the budget deficit, you're not going to be able to fix the trade deficit. One-off deals are great. They make for good photo ops and stuff, but you'll still have a massive trade imbalance overall. It becomes a game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah, and that's the part where I'm unclear is, does the United States actually need to fix the trade imbalance with Vietnam in order to get these tariffs down, or are we going to see an announcement here that's more symbolic in nature? I think we'll have to wait and see. But on that subject of deficits and spending, obviously the Trump administration has made a big deal of their attempts to cut government spending. We are seeing the layoffs. We've pointed out that the promises made by DOGE are almost certain to not come to fruition because of the depth of cuts that would need to be made to things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and defense in order to get there. But the other side of that equation is tax bill. And Scott Bessent on Wednesday afternoon after the tariffs were announced spoke of his trip down to Capitol Hill to talk to Congress about those tax cuts. And we're starting to get day-to-day more and more hints as to what's in, what's out, what's being taken seriously, what's not. And I think my surprise is that there are more of the Trump wish list from his campaign that seem to be making their way into at least serious debate on this tax bill. So items that are in there include the tax on tips piece that was debated. That is being made into some drafts. The piece when it comes to the SALT deductions, the state and local taxes, that was a big push after he visited New York State, also apparently making it into some of these drafts here. The question becomes, using the tools that the Republicans are, which is budget reconciliation, you have some very strict rules in terms of how much you can actually cut taxes. You have to be able to work it within the budget, and this is the first reporting that I've seen here of them actually figuring out how they're going to raise some of that revenue, which is Republicans apparently debating hiking the top income tax rate to 40% for millionaires from the current 37%.
Raising the SALT cap will offset some of that.
Yep.
They'll be able to reduce their taxable, people in that bracket will be able presumably to reduce their taxable income a little bit. They're not raising the SALT cap enough, I don't think, to make up for that.
So
it's encouraging that they're talking about
pre-Donald Trump tax cuts, the top rate for those earning more than $620,000 was 39.6%. So this is pretty much just a reversion back to that pre-cut norm. I just found it very, very interesting, and it's also why I'm taking it a little bit more seriously that, hey, I think this administration is actually really focusing on tax cuts for the middle class and the corporate tax cuts that they want to remain locked in because, again, does this get traction? Does it land anywhere? Yeah. I don't know, but the Republican Party is talking about increasing tax rates on millionaires.
A little itty bit, and by the time this gets to the point of being seriously considered, the economy could be in a very different place. An economic slowdown or worse will lead to ballooning deficits and will present a whole new host of fiscal challenges.
We're going to take a quick break here. We will have the trivia winner when we come back, but Powell making some statements immediately after, perhaps in response to, I'm not sure yet, to President Trump's statements on interest rates. We'll be covering those statements next.
Bringing the latest financial news straight to your radio every day. It's the Financial Exchange on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or a family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visitusvi.com/promotions, where you'll find the details about all of these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divi Carina Bay all-inclusive beach resort and casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visitusvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com/promotions.
Did you outgrow your timeshare and now you want out? But you can't. You can't sell it, and you can't get out of the contract. Imagine trying to get out of your mortgage. That's what a timeshare is. You can't just call up the bank and say, I don't want to pay it anymore. But we may be able to help you do just that. Listen, a timeshare maybe for you once was a great thing, but now you don't use it much, and they are not easy to get rid of. Plus, you do have to pay for it every month. Qualified timeshare owners can get out of their contract legally and permanently without ruining your credit or even filing bankruptcy. And imagine no more mortgage payment or fees. Call the Timeshare Exit Hotline qualification line now. It's free to learn more.
800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. That's 800-455-7967. Paid for by Timeshare Defense.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
Hi, I'm Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. The DAV of Massachusetts provides thousands of hours of voluntary services at our VA medical centers and soldiers' homes and is the only DAV department in the country to lead a veterans housing initiative for both single veterans and those with families. These programs are critical to serving our veterans in their time of need. You can help our great American heroes by making a donation today. Please visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Hi, it's Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we have a guide available this month titled How to Build a Retirement Budget. Mike, one of the issues that we've seen for retirees in the last several years is significantly higher home insurance premiums and property taxes going up as well. How do people attempt to navigate this but still stay within the budget they had laid out for themselves?
Yeah, look, the cost of home ownership, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. Whether you are buying a home for the first time or you are just seeing those insurance and tax rates that you mentioned going up, it is really impossible to avoid. And I think that's where that flexibility in the budget comes in and needs to be recognized. Because, for instance, you might have factored in a huge cost savings by moving to Florida a decade ago.
Sure.
A lot of that has been eaten up over the course of the last several years. And so you have to have a budget that can evolve with your lifestyle over time.
How often do you review that budget?
You know, I think it's important to at least get a grasp on it once a year. And you can really see costs fluctuate a lot during those periods of time. But those flexibility points are really important because you have to account for inflation, and different things inflate at different rates. So, for example, you might see that your costs of health care rise dramatically in your later years, both because you need more of it and because health care costs inflate faster than other types of costs. And you have to build those into the budget, even though you might be paying nothing for them today.
This month, our guide is titled How to Build a Retirement Budget, and the way to request it is by calling 800-393-4001. The guide again is How to Build a Retirement Budget, and the number to call is 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Find daily interviews and full shows of the Financial Exchange on our YouTube page. Like us on YouTube and get caught up on anything and everything you might have missed. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
All right, the trivia question for today was, how many teams from New England have won the men's NCAA tournament? That would be 2. UConn won 6 national championships for men, and Holy Cross won their lone championship way back in 1947. Winner today of the new Financial Exchange Show t-shirt was Kevin from Standish, Maine. Congrats to Kevin. And we play trivia every day here on the Financial Exchange. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
If you blink, you might miss what's happening in markets here, so I'm going to recap a couple of breaking news stories that broke during the show today. First off, there's reporting that Vietnam may be in negotiations with the Trump administration for a reduced tariff rate. More to come on that if we see any sort of official announcement. But Nike shares, I haven't checked within the last 30
Last I
seconds,
checked, it was
so.
up 4%.
Yeah, but you checked like 5 minutes ago. And it's
4.1%.
You're right, 4.16%. I mentioned before the break that the odds of a rate cut at the next May meeting for the Federal Reserve was previously sitting around 50-50. Then Jerome Powell started talking, and those rates have now been reduced to about a 1 in 3 chance of a rate cut.
I hope
at
he's
that
setting
May
up an
7th
Indeed.com
meeting.
account right now as we watch him live.
So let's talk about Jay Powell's comments here, because I do not believe were crafted in response to President Trump's announcement.
Chance.
These were pre-organized remarks.
Staff goes over them, and no way.
Correct, yeah. So these were remarks that were prepared in a speech delivered to business journalists in Arlington, Virginia. And his main message was the effect of tariffs are highly uncertain in terms of what they do to both inflation and employment, and therefore we're probably not going to be doing anything anytime soon.
Well, he actually went a little further and said they might be, I'm going to use the word stagflationary because that describes pretty well what happens when prices go up and supply goes down, but that's basically what he said, and apparently he's further digging himself a hole with the president. He's elaborating on those comments right now, ironically under an exit sign, which is, Tucker Silva pointed out, some wag is going to post that to social media. Yeah, he's speaking right under an exit sign. It looks like
It's just
a
not
Holiday Inn.
It's not a great setup overall. It
looks cheesy. It looks
like it's in some like weird office.
If you're a fan of South Park, you might have seen the scenes from the airport Hilton Denver.
Right.
It kind of looks like that. Yeah, it's not a terribly luxurious place, but regardless, I've said
What's
on
behind
this
there, like house wrap? What is that? Look at that backing.
Unclear.
It looks like.
In either case, that's not the most important thing that's going on with this press conference. The most important thing is that he is directly contradicting what the president wants, which is lower interest rates and lower interest rates now. Jerome Powell instead saying, look, this could create more inflation. It could create a stagflationary environment, and setting himself up for, I think as Mark is alluding to here,
he's done.
Being fired.
Get out the lettuce.
Being removed
Get out the head of lettuce.
as the head. And I have to say that we talked a lot about this over the last year. I don't know what that does to markets if he does get removed. It is going to inject a whole new degree of uncertainty if that does end
uncharted. I mean, we have had an independent central bank since roughly the early 1950s, when the Fed and the Treasury agreed to let the Fed conduct monetary policy to stabilize the economy. That's evolved over the decades. We take it for granted that the Fed is independent, but it's a creature of Congress, and Congress gave the president power to appoint its head. There, I'm no legal scholar, obviously. There's probably a good argument for removing him, not on some pretext that he's not done a good job, but I mean an argument that the president can do it. I'd like to assume that the president could do it because the Fed chair should be accountable ultimately to the people. I'm not comfortable personally with the idea of for what it is worth, of a Fed chair being entirely insulated from the will of the voters, even during his appointment period. That said, it's going to depend on who the president puts in his place, and we just can't speculate on that right now, even though I'd love to, but was told not to.
Mark desperately wanted to start listing candidates when there hasn't even been yet a hint of removal from the White House. But to your point, I think you are potentially painting a path here. And in spite of the fact that I've said on this program that I think Jerome Powell has done an excellent job sidestepping any of the policy or politics questions to this point, and frankly is doing so again today, he is not interjecting and saying, I think we should be doing this or that on tariffs or spending cuts. He is merely saying that the results of those tariffs good, bad, or ugly, are just uncertain. But in any case, setting it up for a potential battle between the White House and the Federal Reserve.
Given the political climate, he should probably just shut up for a while. I mean, I've always thought, a lot of researchers think this. The Fed officials should just shut up and do their thing at press conferences and releases maybe after decisions. But in this climate especially, he can only get himself in trouble. And for the good of the country, for the good of our institutions, he should shut up. Maybe go meet with the president privately. But it's more than his job that's on the line here. It's Fed independence. And long run, obviously, I think that will be destabilizing if we lose that as an institutional characteristic of the way the economy works.
Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visit usvi.com/promotions, where you'll find details about all these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divvy Carina Bay all-inclusive beach resort and casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visit usvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visit usvi.com/promotions.
Just going back to markets here for a moment, and I'm not even going to recap where they are. I'll do that at the end of the program because they are just bouncing around so much now, off more than 4% on the S&P 500. Why we are paying a lot of attention to that, not only because we are a markets and business news program, but we've talked about this stat a couple of times now over the course of the last few months. As of the most recent data, about half of all consumer spending is coming from the very top 10% of income earners, who predominantly drive a lot of their wealth increase over the last few years, or drove a lot of their wealth increase from the last few years from the stock market, from their value of their home over the course of the last few years. That has been the main driver. In my guess, this is all a guess. Like we don't know with certainty why those top 10% are spending, but we know that they are spending a lot more as a percentage of the total amount of spending than we've seen any time in history. And so my guess as to why they're doing it is because they feel wealthier. I think there's plenty of economic research to support that. And there's the bigger
share of they're taking a bigger share of overall income. I don't mean taking as in they don't earn it. I just mean they are. A bigger share.
Right, the top 10% represents
to them, yeah. So it's wealth and it's income. They're accruing larger shares.
And so when we talk about the possibility of a recession, what accompanies a recession is many things, but it's an uptick in unemployment and a decrease in spending. And we are such a spending-based economy these days, right? We are not an industrial economy. We are not, today at least, an economy that produces a whole bunch of stuff. We are an economy that buys stuff and that moves.
Well, we produce a lot of services, Mike. I mean, you can't.
Yep, a lot of services.
Yeah, I know you're not downplaying it, but this idea that, can I talk about this? Because this is another pet peeve.
Let's go there.
I'll be really brief. People say, oh my God, manufacturing jobs, we lost them all. We got to get them back. We make more than we ever have. We just do it with very few people. Nobody laments the fact that only 1 or 2% of the population spends their time on agriculture anymore, yet we feed the whole population and then some. So it's sort of normal to move on from less sophisticated agriculture and manufacturing, although some manufacturing processes were obviously very sophisticated. I'm painting with a very broad brush, into things that are more technologically intensive, like services. So this idea that the economy's been hollowed out is, again, belied by the growth numbers, where we're trouncing everybody else because we're the world's leader in services. I have to make that point because it gets thrown in with all this other stuff about what tariffs are supposed to cure, and it's misguided.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, Paul LaMonica is joining us next to talk about the big IPO that went off earlier this week, Newsmax. We'll be back with that next on the Financial Exchange.
The Financial Exchange streams live on YouTube. Like our page and stay up to date on breaking business news all morning long. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, the United States Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next vacation. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a long weekend with friends, or a family vacation, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John have everything you need to enjoy that special time away from home. Take advantage of a variety of incredible promotions that are available right now. Go to visitusvi.com/promotions, where you'll find the details about all of these amazing experiences, including a stay at the Divi Carina Bay all-inclusive beach resort and casino on St. Croix. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Don't miss your chance to enjoy America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Head to visitusvi.com/promotions for more information and to book your trip today. That's visitusvi.com/promotions. It's easy to say that you're simply leaving your assets to your children, but without proper beneficiary planning, it can cause significant problems. Call Cushing & Dolan at 866-848-5699 and get their new guide called How to Leave Assets to Beneficiaries. Don't leave your future or your children's future to chance. Call 866-848-5699 or request it online from our website, legalexchangeshow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Preparing for retirement can be agonizing and might actually feel like a full-time job. This is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Creating a budget that fits your goals and needs in retirement is one way to alleviate some of that stress. Our new guide is called How to Build a Retirement Budget, and it contains several strategies that may help you coordinate your assets in a way that allows you to enjoy financial peace in your retirement years. From understanding your income sources to setting up the proper withdrawal schedule, this guide can help you build a complete budget that covers all of your retirement needs. If you're at or near retirement age, give the Armstrong Advisory Group a call at 800-393-4001 and ask for our new guide today. That number again is 800-393-4001, or you can request the guide online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
As a busy mom to 4 kids, my to-do list is full.
Trying to fit in exercise, eating right, and prioritizing self-care can feel next to impossible.
While we can't add more hours to the day, we do have a great resource to help.
Go Red for Women has easy tips, tools, and information to help you and your family live a healthier life.
So to all the moms, the aunts, the grandmothers, and amazing women out there doing it all,
visit goredforwomen.org/momlife today.
You take care of them, Go Red for Women will take care of you.
Heads up, athletes, coaches, and parents. Play for life, not just points. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or HCM, is the leading cause of sudden cardiac death, especially in black athletes in sports like football or basketball. If you feel shortness of breath, chest pain, and fatigue, or have a family history of HCM, talk to your doctor. Don't let HCM bend you for good. Learn how to stay in the game at heart.org/HCM student athlete. Your heart, your health, your move.
The Financial Exchange Show podcast drops every day on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Hit that subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. You're listening to the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend.
Joining us now is Paul LaMonica from Barron's. Talk to us about the IPO that kind of went off and then got, well, clobbered in trading afterwards. But Paul, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Newsmax. I think a lot of people were focused on CoreWeave, the tech company that was that went public on Friday as potential savior of the IPO market, but almost out of nowhere, Newsmax, the conservative cable news and social media company, went public on Monday, and it just was a mind-boggling debut. The stock priced at 10, went up more than 700% on its first day, more than doubled again. It's cooled off, in the past few days with all the market volatility, but I think it's fair to wonder if this is the new MAGA trade, if you will, replacing DJT, Trump Media.
So when we take a look at the IPO market, I think a lot of people were reading into, hey, this CoreWeave IPO failing. It didn't fail. It did go off, but at a far reduced price. Yeah, it has since bounced back. But I think there's a lot written after that IPO of, hey, this has echoes of the dot-com bubble when IPOs were just not going off the way they meant to. Does this Newsmax IPO reassure anybody out there in terms of the IPO market? I know a lot's changed, obviously, since Monday of this week, right. but in and of itself, they are very different companies, obviously raising a sizably different amount of money as well. Should anyone take stock of, hey, this might be healthy for the IPO market based on what happened with Newsmax?
I don't think so. When you look at Newsmax, 7.5 million shares being offered. It's a very small fraction of the overall shares outstanding. So you had that scarcity value and probably a fervent, loyal base of potential retail investors who might be fans of Newsmax's content, much in the same way that Trump Media kind of went bonkers last year after that SPAC deal closed and it's cooled off as reality has set in. The good news, if you want to call it that, with Newsmax versus, say, Trump Media is that, Newsmax is a legitimate media company with a very strong presence. It's fourth in the ratings behind CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, which is an affiliate company, related to my parent company, News Corp, that owns Barron's and Dow Jones. And it does have a significant chunk of revenue. It is losing money, but the revenue base is much larger. It's just that when you look at the valuation for Newsmax and compare it to the larger media companies that own cable news companies like Warner Brothers Discovery with CNN and Comcast with MSNBC and Fox with Fox News, the valuation, even on a price to revenue standpoint, even after the stock has come down later this week, is still, quite frankly, exorbitant, to put it mildly. You're talking about a company that's got a plus $7 billion plus market cap, on only 170 million or so in annual revenue.
Paul, how did they conduct this IPO? Because I was hearing about it from a lot of different areas. Was it through your typical investment bank, or did they go after a different group to participate in the public offering itself?
Yeah, this was not done in the in the same way that you have a lot of other traditional IPOs with big investment banks such as Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, et cetera. This had a smaller. It was a smaller offering, obviously, being only 7.5 million shares, and the investment banker was not one of the kind of bulge bracket big Wall Street firm. So, whether or not that added to the allure, since this was not perceived as being, a Wall Street, mainstream type of IPO, that's possible.
Paul LaMonica from Barron's joining us to talk about the IPO of Newsmax that went off on Monday of this week, and it's following 700% surge that day and the days after. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next week. So, Mark, anything that you wanted to jump on for Stack Roulette? What was your top pick for the day?
80 million people, Mike, will be filing their own tax returns in a couple of weeks if they haven't already. Some might be tempted to cut corners because of staff cuts at the IRS. Wall Street Journal has an article today warning us, maybe warning me specifically, not to.
You should not admit live on radio that you intend to
I had
defraud the government in taxes.
I thought nobody was guarding the hen house, so it would be a good time. Fudge a number here or there. Stupid idea, don't do it. IRS gets everything from your employer, from brokerage accounts you might have, W-2s, 1099s, you name it. So much of it is automated. Software matches up your return, apparently, glad this was in here. Now I know. With things that brokerage firms and other entities that report to the IRS report, there's not somebody with green eye shades looking over every return. If you make a mistake on something that somebody that an entity submits a form like a W-2 or a 1099 for on your behalf, you're going to get an automatic bill. So there goes my spending money.
I'll also mention that this is the, I think, second year in a row where IRS is offering filers in 25 participating states who only report certain types of income. So you can only have W-2 wages, Social Security, unemployment comp, interest income, retirement income. But if you fall into that category, then you can actually file for free directly with the IRS and their online tools rather than needing to go to a paid service. Again, 25 states, so only about half of the states are actually participating in this. But I know a few of them are in New England. I don't have the list in front of me, but pretty big change from the way things were done just a few years ago. Any interesting recession indicators that you have your eye on, Mark? Because Wall Street Journal is mentioning the bagged lunch
you're going
indicator.
somewhere silly with this. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I like
Michael, I've just reviewed some data. I don't see anything. You're going with sandwiches.
I like sandwiches. Yeah,
pickles.
Yeah. Whenever I have the opportunity
Armstrong
to talk about
Reuben
sandwiches
Index
closing in on noon, I always do so. But the Wall Street Journal is printing that more people are bringing lunch to work, which is a bad economic indicator. I don't know how they measure that one, other than
good point.
people aren't shopping.
Excuse
out
me, ma'am. What's in that bag? Hey, screw you, creepo.
Is that a peanut butter and jelly I see there? What's going on?
I do genuinely love these weird recession indicators. I know Fidelity used to have some chart where they were looking at, I think, taxi cab volumes in New York City or something along those lines, which is a fairly good indicator. Warren Buffett had always used his men's underwear indicator, which might be why he bought Fruit of the Loom ultimately, just so we could own that one indicator.
That's what he told his wife as to why he had all those catalogs anyway. No, honey, it's for research.
Oh, boy, oh, boy.
It's for economic research.
Taking a look at markets as we close out the financial exchange for the week. They're not looking good. Dow off nearly 1,400 points, 3 1/3%. S&P off 206, 3.8%, and the Nasdaq off 615 points, 3.7% as we close out the show today. We will be right back at it tomorrow, and everyone is looking for those announcements on negotiations. We'll be covering that and more next week here on the Financial Exchange.